Year 7. So today we're doing dividing by a fraction. So when you divide by a fraction, you multiply by its reciprocal. So it's dividing by a fraction, you multiply by its reciprocal. The reciprocal is the fraction upside down. So just flip it. In these first examples, we're just looking at what a reciprocal is. So if I give you 2/3, we just turn it upside down and its reciprocal equals 3/2. When you're doing questions like this in your homework, I want you to write reciprocal equals. Don't just write 2/3 equals 3/2 because it doesn't equal 3/2. Okay, make sure you write reciprocal equals 3/2. The next one, we're looking at 7. You can't flip that if you don't have a fraction to begin with. So we have to write 7 as a fraction. And you should know by now that whole numbers can be given a denominator of 1. So once it's written as 7/1, then you can flip it and the reciprocal equals 1/7. Over here, we're getting the reciprocal of 2.5. So we have to write this as a fraction, something over something. So to do that, we have to change this whole thing to an improper fraction. So we're going to do what we normally do, which is around like the tick. Times first and then add. So we're 2 times 2, 4, plus 1 is 5, write it down, and the denominator stays as it is. So it's 5/2. Now we're going to flip it to get the reciprocal, and the reciprocal is 2/5. These next questions, we're actually doing the divisions by a fraction. So the question says evaluate. Evaluate means get a number answer. So we're going to go all the way down until we get a number. This is the question. We have 4 divided by 1/3. Everything has to be written as fractions. So this, because it's a whole number, we're going to write it as 4/1 divided by 1/3. Now, I want you to circle divided by 1/3 because that's where we're actually dividing by a fraction. And I want you to change that to a times, and then we flip this and get its reciprocal. Now we're doing a multiplication question. So we're going to times the tops and times the bottoms, and you'll get 12/1. And then you know the fraction bar means divided by. So we're going to do 12 divided by 1 equals 12. Alright, the next question. We have 1/4 divided by 2/3. We're going to circle the dividing by the fraction, and we're going to change that to times its reciprocal. So change that to a times and flip this. We never touch the first thing. It just stays as it is. Alright, so now we're timesing, so we times the tops and times the bottoms, and there's your answer. This next question, we'll do the same again. Dividing by a fraction, change it to times by its reciprocal, flip it, and write it as 6/5. Times your tops, times your bottoms, you get 42/50. Now this one can be simplified, so you do need to take it down to its simplest answer. So I can divide the top and bottom by 2 here, and get 21/25. The next question, circle the dividing by the fraction part, turn that into times by its reciprocal, flip it, and then do your multiplications. 5 times 12 is 60, 6 times 5 is 30, then we're going to do 60 divided by 30 is 2. Okay, up the top here with E, we're doing 5/7 divided by 5. Everything has to be written as a fraction. So the 5 is a whole number. We're going to write it as 5/1 first. Don't try and do too many things in one line. You can see how many lines I'm taking to do them. You have to do all the working. We're going to circle that now and change it to times by its reciprocal. So turn that upside down to be 1/5. Times your tops and times your bottoms, and you get 5/35. We can simplify this by dividing top and bottom by 5, and it becomes 1/7. This question is pretty complicated. This is about the hardest you're going to get. So we're going to change both of these mixed numerals into improper fractions. So 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Write it on the top. The bottom number stays as it is. Divided by. And over here, 1 times 4 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Write it down. Over 4. Keep your denominator. So now we're up to the part where we're dividing by the fraction, and we're going to change that to times its reciprocal. flip that fraction upside down, times your tops times your bottoms, and you get 28/10. We can simplify that down by dividing top and bottom by 2. So 28 divided by 2 is 14. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Now, that answer would be marked correct in a test because the question just said evaluate. So we just have to give them a number answer, and an improper fraction is fine. If you want to change it to a mixed numeral because the question started as a mixed numeral, you can. That might be the kind of answer they give you in the textbook. So if you're looking at yours going, well, I'm not sure if it's right because they've written that down, you could just change it to a mixed numeral and check. Okay, so 14 divided by 5 is 2, remainder 4. And the number that you're dividing by stays on the bottom. Okay, so either one of those would be marked correct. Just be careful though, in case the question does say evaluate writing your answer as a mixed numeral, in which case you would have to give the mixed numeral answer. Alright, this next question's a bit tricky. We have to think about this a bit. So we're completing an empty box here. We're going to find what goes in that box to make this statement true. So we have something divided by 2/3 equals 1/7. This question doesn't look very easy to do, but we can do a few things to make it easier. So instead of dividing by the fraction, we're going to turn this into timesing by its reciprocal, because I think it'll be easier to look at. So now we've got this to try and work out. Now, this is quite a hard question because we can't just easily go something times 3 equals 1. That's not a whole number, so it's going to be a bit harder to do. So what I'm going to do, teach you something that we kind of need later on anyway. I'm going to just keep this empty box here by itself on the left-hand side. So I'm going to get rid of the times 3/2 and move it over to the right-hand side of the equal sign. Now, if I move it to another side, I have to change the operation of what we're doing. So if I move a times over, I have to do the opposite operation, which is divided by. I'm going to move the times over and become divided by, and the 3/2 goes with it. So now we're going to divide by a fraction again. We times by its reciprocal, flip it, and now all we have to do is times our tops and times our bottoms to get us our answer. So in a minute, we're going to come back on the next video and do 2 problem questions before you attempt your homework.